Hey, hockey fans, T-Boz is 13-3 here with another top shelf guest, Hibbing, Minnesota native and Golden Gopher legend, Pat Micheletti. This episode is sponsored by Riverside Bike and Skate, Markin & Johnson, Hertel Law, and Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, Moog.
Hey, we are here with Pat Micheletti, as JC just said, at kind of our home away from home, JC. We're at Tom Reed's Hockey City Pub in St. Paul, Minnesota, and Pat has graced us with his presence today. We're going to talk some hockey. Thanks so much for coming, Pat.
It's great to be with you guys. As I've mentioned before, I've been listening to you guys and watching you guys, and finally I get the opportunity to be on with you guys. So it's great. And anytime we can talk hockey, it's a great day.
Absolutely. And let's start off with, you are in the hockey business all the time. What are you doing now?
Well, yeah, that's a great, kind of everything, right? No, I do some radio for KFAN radio. I have a show that I do, a hockey show, Beyond the Pond, that Kevin Fallness, who is with the Minnesota Wild, he and I do all winter long, which is really fun. And I work for the Big Ten Network, doing games for them and some of their content work. So that keeps me busy. I do, whatever TV is available, I will do. Whoever calls, I'm there. I do some Iowa Wild games. So kind of all over the place, and so it's been my passion, and it's been my life. So I wanted to stay in the game, and this is what I decided to do.
So speaking of your life, you were born and raised in Hibbing, Minnesota, in the heart of the Masabi Iron Range. Tell us about your childhood. I heard you had a lot of family members.
Yeah,
tell us about that.
Well, I come from I'm the ninth of nine, and my mother always reminded the rest of my family it took her 9 times to get it right.
Oh,
so and they don't believe me, but no, I was very fortunate to have a really, really great family. Starting with my parents, obviously, and believe it or not, my dad was not a big sports guy. It was my mother who really, was at every game, getting us to practice and all that stuff. But I had really good mentors in my brothers and my sisters. And, that's why I was able to get to, where I am today is because of them. And, growing up in a little small 3-bedroom house and with 9 of us, you can imagine, what it was like.
Bathroom time was a premium.
Oh, it was, when you had 1.5 baths. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It was. But you know what, you find a way and you do it. And, it was, I miss those days of my youth growing up.
When did you start on the blades?
Well, my brother Tom, who was 17 years older than I, was at Harvard, and he came home one Christmas and a pair of skates came. I was 3 when I started, just in a little backyard rink that my brothers, put together, and I started then, and we played out there, and it just carried on, and that's where it all started.
So being the youngest of 9, and like you said, your mom took her 9 shots to get it right.
Yep, she did.
I'm so happy she went that far with you.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
So how were they with you? I mean, you were the little guy, right? Tagging along. Did they grind you up, or did they?
Well, I tell you what, it all starts with the ones ahead of you, and you kind of follow their lead, and you follow what was set for them. And for me, it was, listen, if I backtalk my mom or backtalk my dad, it wasn't them. It wasn't my parents who took care of it. It was my older brothers and my older sisters. And that was kind of the pecking order, right? And so, you learned right away how to act and how you're supposed to act. And, again, we can talk about sports and all that all we want, but it's just, how to be a good person and how you're supposed to act. And my brothers and sisters did that for me.
Kept you in line, kept you in
line.
check.
Yeah, without a doubt.
When did you started at the age of 3 with the skates? Was that an outdoor rink atmosphere up there?
Always, yeah.
So back in my day, when you came out, you always played a little game of shinny.
Yep.
And you learned at that time how to be tough because the older kids didn't care
Nope.
running you over.
Right.
Same thing with you.
Oh, for sure. And it was easy for me because I'd be in the backyard playing with my older brothers and they had no fear. I mean, they didn't care. If I'm in the way, you're going to get hit. But no, you're right. I grew up on the outdoor rinks. I think there were 7, maybe 8 in our town, and they were all, kept up, fairly well. And it was whoever showed up, you played, you shoveled off the rink, and it didn't matter if you were a mite or a high school kid, you played. And that's how how I really got my competitiveness is by wanting to beat those guys and be as good as those guys or keep up with those guys and learn from those guys and girls, I should say. And so, that's how it was growing up.
So your brothers, they've all achieved a high level of athletics achievement. So a lot of hockey players, and you had a brother that was also a high level football player.
Yeah. Yeah. We all, that's, when you grow up in a small town, as you guys know, you got to keep busy. And we played everything. All my brothers, we played all the sports, hockey, football, baseball. In fact, I played basketball. I tried to play high school basketball, but the athletic director would not allow it because it conflicted with hockey on some nights. But I grew up with my friends playing elementary basketball, junior high basketball, all that. And I loved it. I loved it. But, he said, you got to pick one. And, and for your winter sport, and hockey it was, obviously, because, that was my main sport anyhow. But, yeah, I played them all, and I got better at hockey because I played those other sports.
Hallelujah!
And,
I was going to ask you that.
I just remember, and talking to my brothers, what if you're at the free throw line and you got to make it to win the game? That's pressure. What if you have to, 2 strikes, you need a hit to win the game? That's pressure. So all of a sudden, all that stuff, when you get on the rink, you don't feel any pressure because you've been through it and you know what pressure is. And I never played a game that I felt, oh man, I have to be, I got to score. It just never entered my mind. My mindset was, you're out here playing, play. Do what you do, and I think that really helped me a lot, in my career. For sure, it did.
Absolutely.
How do you feel about the kids nowadays that are focusing just on one sport as opposed to the multiple sports? Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I do I do, and I do understand that times have changed, and we can argue whether it's for the the better or not, but I love when guys are playing all 3 sports or 2 sports or getting involved in other things. I don't like the fact that, a lot of, I think the pressure comes when you are only, involved in one thing. And I think it affects players. I see it. I see it in parents who are putting all their eggs in one basket here and thinking that their son or daughter is going to make it, or the kid thinks he's going to make it, and then lo and behold, it rarely happens. And so I don't know. I think the fun of athletics gets taken away a little bit. Now, a lot of people say, well, he just loves it and that's all he wants to do. Or, I don't believe that. I really don't. And I wish kids got involved in other stuff. Because I tell you what, there was nothing better for me that when hockey season ended, I knew baseball was right around the corner. I can put hockey away for a while. And then have that energy and that want to get right back on the ice when it was hockey season again. And I think there's something to be said for that. But again, we're in different times, and I understand, I guess.
Speaking of different times, I noticed that you also have two sisters, and
Yes.
I think they probably grew up in a time when there wasn't a lot of opportunities for women. But were they out there whacking around with you guys on the
I'll
rink
tell you
too?
what, there weren't many women's sports back then at all. But at Christmas time, everyone would come home, and I'm talking, and they're all older, right? And we're still in this little 3-bedroom house, and I'm the kid. At one point I was the king of the house, and I had the main bedroom, right? But now when they came home, I got kicked out. But every Christmas, my mom would be inside cooking, and we would have everybody, all my brothers, my dad, and my two sisters, and we'd play a street hockey game. And there were no holds barred. It didn't matter. My dad was in the way. He's getting thrown in the snowbank. And it got competitive because we all were competitive. We all wanted to win. And it was the best time. It's what everyone looked forward to every Christmas. And, that was kind of a tradition in our family.
I could just see that.
Yeah.
Oh, it was crazy. And the thing was, in the first, we used to have a draft. Right? And so the first draft, the first pick in the draft every year was not any of us who played hockey. It was my brother Jim, who played football at North Dakota, because he never played hockey, and so he had no skill, no hands, no. But if you got near him, you're flat on your face. And so we always wanted Jim on our team.
Didn't want to get in his way.
No,
Enforcer.
not at all. Oh, it was unreal. Yeah.
Well, you moved up the ranks pretty good in youth hockey, and your senior year, you had 26 goals and 39 assists in 22 games. When did colleges start knocking on your door?
Well, I was first to get colleges looking at you, you have to do something, right? So you mentioned what I did there, but it helped with, I had two older brothers, all my brothers, one went to Harvard, one went to Air Force, one went to Gustavus, and then my two other ones, Joe and Don, were both at Minnesota. So we had a hockey tradition in our family, and by the time, right around when I was a ninth grader, I started getting recruited, and it was, to me, it back then it was flattering, but you didn't really think much beyond just playing, and then obviously it really ramped up. My senior year is when you start taking trips and being recruited, and a lot of schools backed away because of my brothers at Minnesota. They thought it was a slam dunk I was going there. Yeah. Little did they know that wasn't the case. I was open to going anywhere, and almost did end up at North Dakota. But that being said, I really, really enjoyed the recruiting process.
So right out of the gate, it was colleges. Did you have any opportunities to go junior at that point, or didn't even think about it?
Didn't back then. No, it was. I was at a level where, that it was going to be college.
Yeah.
Okay, just because. And so no, And back then, the USHL was a league that took players that were not ready for the D1 level.
Right.
Okay, they needed another year, and I was, at that point where I was getting recruited to be ready that year. Okay. And now the USHL, it's all changed, right? You really go to the USHL or NAHL to get that extra year in and get bigger and stronger and faster and work on your skills. But that wasn't the case back then. And it didn't entertain, didn't even enter my mind, really.
Sure.
Yeah.
What was the recruiting process like back? We've talked to old timers that, like Darcy Way went to Michigan Tech, and he had 2 eggs on a paper plate with some bacon and John McGinnis came by, tapped him on the shoulder, shook his hand, and said, "Like to have you here," and that was it. So, what was it like back in your day?
Well, it was, it was a little different. We had a really good team. In fact, the Iron Range that year, I think we had 16 guys go Division I, if you can imagine. Yeah. It was really, really good. And so there were, college scouts up there all the time. In fact, Dean Blaze, who was at North Dakota at the time as an assistant, is from International Falls. He used to stop in Hibbing. My mom would make him dinner, and he would go to Virginia Rapids or somewhere and be watching somebody, not to come watch me or whatever, at that time. Yeah. But he's a good friend of the family, and so he'd stop, and my mom would have dinner for him, and off he'd go. But so it was, back then. They wanted to get you early and get you signed, and that was a big thing. And Denver was all over me. North Dakota was all over me. The Michigan schools and some teams from out east. And I just waited. In fact, I didn't commit to Minnesota until after the state high school hockey tournament. Never happens. It never happens. These guys now, it's changed, right? But I didn't feel a need to commit. I wanted to wait and see what else potentially could come up. And
had you been offered at that time?
I was offered pretty much from the beginning of the season.
Okay.
By Denver, and it was really funny. UMD recruited me. Or didn't recruit me, I should say. UMD was at a game. We're playing Cloquet, Corey Millen, right? He and I were neck and neck for scoring up there for 4 years. And so a big game, Cloquet comes, they beat us, and Mike Surdich is there. And Mike comes down and he talks to Millen, and then he comes over to our room and I'm talking to him. He says, I'm not going to even recruit you. He says, I know you're not coming here. You're going to Minnesota, so that's it. Done.
Surdy, what the heck?
Yeah, but, to a certain degree, he may have been right. He ended up being right.
Yeah.
And, and I love Surdy to death. And, we battled for when he's at UMD and I'm at Minnesota. But, he was honest, and I like that. Now, when I went to Wisconsin on a recruiting trip, I knew why I was going there. They knew, or I thought, that I was also going to go to Minnesota. But Bob Johnson was the coach there, right? And Grant Stanbrook was the assistant. He was originally from Coleraine, so I knew Grant a long time. And he said, come on down for a visit. So he says, we're going to go to lunch with Bob. I'm like, okay. I go to lunch with Bob Johnson, and we sit down, me, him, and Grant, and all he does is ask me about all the players in Minnesota. If I played against them, what they're like. Because he was using me to get my opinion on those guys, who should he offer? Dave Maley, Ernie Vargas, Marty Wiedela, Jim Johansson, that was the class. Mm-hmm. And there were other guys that he asked me about, and it was really, but see, he knew he was really smart.
He knew you were going to Minnesota.
Well,
too.
At least they thought that anyway, and quite frankly, maybe they weren't going to offer me. We never got that far, but I was really, really interesting. And North Dakota, they recruited me really, really hard. They wanted Tony Kellen and I, Tony Kellen from Grand Rapids, who ended up at Minnesota also, and they offered Tony and I. Right out of the gate. Tony and I and Scott Sandelin, when I went there, we drove there on a recruiting trip, and they offered Tony and I, and they didn't offer Scott yet, right? They were waiting because they had already committed some D and told him to hang on, and then Scott ends up going there because Tony goes to Minnesota. But I remember, and they offered a full ride right away. And Dean thought everything, it was a great relationship, and I was really, really close to going there. And when I told Gino Gasparini calls me, and he says, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to go to Minnesota. Click. Hung up on me. That was it. That was it. That was the end of our conversation. And, we laughed about it later because, I got along with, Gino really well. Nothing but, total respect for him and the programs. But
you had to move on, man.
Damn.
And
got other calls to make.
And guess what? My dad was mad at me because he thought, maybe it'd be good for you to get away from Minnesota because of Joe and Don, both captains, both national champions, and thought it'd be too much for me to handle, or didn't want me to have to do that. And I'm like, screw that. They did it. I'm going to do it. And that's the way I looked at it.
So having those two older brothers there, I'm guessing you had multiple opportunities to get down there. You met the guys, you met the coaches, you were in the building, you were in the locker room. I mean, you had a lot of familiarity with Minnesota at that time.
Yeah, Herbie Brooks gave me free reign to be or do whatever I wanted, which was, the ushers there would say, you can't go in. I'm like, and then like, well, go tell Herbie that, and I'd be in there when he's talking to the guys and the whole thing. And, I'd be on the bench. In fact, a really interesting story, 1976 at the national championships in Denver. Okay. Minnesota plays BU, bench clear. They win the game, day off, and Minnesota's practicing. And at that time, my brother Joe was on the team. He's a junior at the time. And my brother Don went up to Canada. Herbie sent him up to Canada, or, Don decided to go up to Canada. He needed to work on his skating and, all that kind of stuff. And Don got offered a scholarship to Denver and Colorado College. And Herbie at the time only had a half scholarship for him. And so we're at practice. Herbie didn't go on the ice. I am 12 years old. Okay? I'm 12.
All right.
I'm sitting next to Herbie. And he's bitching about my brother Don. He says, Pat, tell you one thing. I want guys who want to be Gophers. You tell your brother I will give him a full scholarship if he tells me that he wants to be a Gopher. So
12 years old. Here you
12
go.
years old. And by the way, keep in mind, no cell phones, right? Any of that. So Minnesota ends up winning the national championship, blah, 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 blah. And so we talked to my brother Don once a week. He was still up in Canada. And I said to my dad, I got to talk to Don. I'm like, Don, you just do this for me. Trust me. Tell Herbie you'll want to be a Gopher. And Don's stubborn. Oh, yeah, they ain't offered me, blah, blah, blah. Didn't offer me a full ride. I'm going to go to Colorado College. Donald, just tell him you want to be a Gopher. And finally, he did. Gets a full ride and, wins the national championship in 1979, 36 goals he had that year, 72 points. A great career at Minnesota. And, that's what happens when you grow up in a hurry when you're 12 years old.
Oh, hell yeah. We've heard a lot of stories about Herb Brooks over the years. And one of the things that is discussed is that he would fire himself up by, in a lack of better words, picking fights with other people.
No doubt.
Okay. So you had the same experience with him where he'd get fired up just to, talk to somebody in a rude way or whatever it might take just to get his emotions going.
I tell you, he looked at my father as a father figure. Okay. So when Herbie and my father talked, they never talked about Joe and Don, who were at the U at the time. Okay. My dad would, they'd go and, whatever Herbie's problems were with a player or this or that or a situation or whatever, my dad would give it to him. And Herbie would listen. And it was just a really good relationship. Never talked about Joe and Don and if they were playing enough or this or that or the other thing or should, and never about telling him how to coach or who, any of that. But it's just about life stuff. And to this day, I'll never forget. Both my parents had passed away. My father first, I think, my brother Joe and Herbie were really, really tight. And so Joe had let Herbie know. Herbie, one time, was in Montreal and caught a flight, drove 4 hours through a snowstorm to be at my father's funeral.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, wow.
Next time, my mother passes away. Sure enough, who's at my mother's funeral? Herb Brooks. I mean, he was just that kind of guy. And, I played briefly under Herbie when he was with the North Stars. And it was really weird because I had known him since I was, this high. And then to play under him, but no, he was a great man. And the sad thing is I was behind him. I was 45 minutes behind him the day that he passed. We were at the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame fundraiser up in Biwabik at Giants Ridge. And he had left early, and then I wasn't too far behind. And yeah, it was a sad day. Yeah. Sad day.
Sad day for hockey.
Yeah, really was.
So speaking of the North Stars, you were drafted by them in 1982 in the 9th round, 185th overall. So how did you find out you were drafted? I'm guessing you weren't at the draft.
I was not at the draft, and it was I didn't know where I was going to go. It was anywhere from the 3rd round to not being drafted. I mean, it was back then it was different, and I was hoping once it got to like the 6th, 7th round that I wouldn't get drafted because then I wouldn't be a free agent. The rules were different then. I'll tell you that story later. But I was actually down in the cities. I was playing in the summer league. Brad Budo was a coach, wanted me to come down and skate all summer and get ready. But I got a call from Glenn Sonmore, and rest in peace, one of the greatest humans ever and the funniest guy
quite
ever.
A character, right?
And he was character guy, and he welcomed me into the organization, and I mean, it's a special day. I don't care, I don't care what round you get drafted in to get drafted. It's a special day for a young kid.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mahonk.
I was going to give a shout out to some sponsors. Is that okay?
Yeah, give her a shout.
All right. Hertel Law is the law firm you want on your side, focusing on criminal defense and personal injury. Harry Hertel has been obtaining results for clients in the Chippewa Valley since 1981. When you need legal help if injured or accused of a crime, call 715-832-4330 for a free in-person consultation. And Mark and Johnson. Thanks to our friends at Market & Johnson, longtime supporters of the great game of hockey and our youth throughout the Chippewa Valley.
You talked a little bit earlier about doing broadcasting for the Big Ten Network.
Yep.
The state of college hockey right now, in my opinion, changed dramatically with the Big Ten.
Yep.
The old WCHA, the old rivalries are gone. New rivalries are hopefully being formed. What did you see from the booth? Did you see, again, my opinion, I don't think that was the best thing for hockey. I miss the old rivalries, the old divisions, things like that. What are you seeing from the broadcast booth?
Well, that's a long answer. I love the rivalries. I think we have to, as hockey people, understand that we are not college basketball, that we are not college football. And rivalries are important, and geographics are important. And I understand with the Big Ten. I think I got to be careful here. I think there would be a way if because I talk to all these coaches all the time. What would they like to see? They like to see the rivalries. They like to see, because, just think we have 6 teams here now in the state of Minnesota that are Division I.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
And you can't tell me that you couldn't get a great television package. You can't tell me that every building would not be sold out every single night because of that rivalry. And everyone hates Minnesota, and everyone wants to play Minnesota, and that's fine. And that's great.
Yeah.
You want that. And you've got, look at the number of Michigan schools and the rivalries that I have. Listen, I've talked to coaches, all over. I won't name, but when they say, hey, when Bowling Green comes in here, we'll get more for a Bowling Green game than we will for UMD coming in, or North Dakota coming in, or someone like that, because of the rivalries and the geography of where everybody is. I think we miss that a little bit. Listen, the Big Ten is turning into a power now. I think you're getting all of the number 1 draft picks, number 2 draft picks, number 3 draft picks are all heading, to the Big Ten. And whether it be, whether it be Michigan, Wisconsin, the NCHC, great league, CCHA, it's a different league. It's coming, especially Augustana in here now. And, what Minnesota State has done, it's they're different. But, still, I love college hockey. I think it's the best in the world.
So when you played, it was UMD and the Gophers were the only 2 D1, but now it's expanded significantly in Minnesota. That's a good thing, as you see, isn't it?
Oh, we give so many more kids an opportunity, and that's the main thing, and you can thank Herb Brooks for his vision. I mean, he was the one who said before St. Cloud got started, and he started St. Cloud, that we need to have. He looked at Michigan. He thought, Northern Michigan, Michigan Tech, all these schools have Division I hockey, and we're the state of hockey, and we only have 1 or 2, I should say, UMD in Minnesota, and so he built it, and look at it now. I think it's wonderful, and we have great coaches. All great coaches, all Minnesota guys, except for Rico Blase, who who's at St. Thomas now, but. So really, really good coaches, and just to give more kids the opportunity, I think is great.
Yeah, I agree.
You've got quite a history with Minnesota. You were a Hobie Baker finalist, first team All-American. You also finished career second all-time in points, 269 points, but 403 penalty minutes. You are a scrapper.
I was immature. I'll be the first to admit it. No,
a little emotional.
Part of it. Was immaturity and lack of self-discipline, but part of it was calculated, because I scored a majority of my goals from 2-3 feet out, and I had to establish position, and I had to let people know, you know what, you're just not going to cross-check me in the back or hit me behind the legs without getting hit back. Yeah. And after a while, they thought, you know what, I'm not going to do that. And then, so you have to create your own space, and it's either kill or be killed. And I chose to get involved, but that's what made me successful, because I wasn't a burner. I wasn't a great skater. I had to outthink my opponents, and part of that was where are you going to score? Where are you going to score? It's going to go off could go off your head, could go off your ankle, doesn't matter. You're not going to do it if you're in the corner. You're going to do it in front of the net, and that's that's what led to my success a little bit.
Well, that's part of that philosophy of the defenseman. I'm going to give this guy a couple of shots, and he's not going to want to come in here anymore.
Right.
And if you're the kind of guy who's going to shy away from that, you're not going to have a long career.
No, because
like you say,
once they know they got you, they got you.
Yeah.
And so, but once they know, if you don't push back a little bit, then, then you're not going to be successful. And then guys get afraid, and, you can't have that mentality if you want to score goals. And I wanted to score goals. That was my job.
And you did.
Yeah.
For our listeners, we never did discuss what position you did play, and why did you pick that position?
Well, I was a center all the way growing up. In fact, my 2 line mates since I was a mite were twins. The Hooper twins. Oh. And we ended up both playing at Illinois Chicago Circle when they had a Division I school. And so, but when I got to Minnesota, they were loaded up the middle. Corey Millen was one of them. He came to Minnesota. They had Rick Erdahl, who was my centerman for 3 years, and Scott Bukestad at the time. Well, okay. They moved me to wing right away, because those guys were the top three, going to be, and I didn't mind. I didn't care, because at that point in time, you want to get in the lineup and you did whatever and played wherever they told you to, whatever they told you to do to get in the lineup. And, so I ended up at wing and played mostly wing my whole career.
So back in your time too, Pat, the majority of the players were from Minnesota,
Yep.
the state of Minnesota, right? That's changing a little bit now. How do you feel about that?
Well, the game's grown, so you got to love that. We're on all 50 states now. Well, 49. Hawaii, I don't know if they play.
They got one rink, I think.
They got
right.
some nice beaches down there.
Yeah, they do. They do. And but I again, times have changed, and there's more players, and there's more opportunities. And God, I can't even think what we had 35 maybe Division I teams when I was playing, and now they're up to 61, 62. Yeah. And so a lot more opportunity. Yeah. It's a lot more competitive in the recruiting circles. So I think it's great. I really do.
Through your career as a broadcaster, is there a game that stands out that you were calling that, that was just the ultimate game to watch and to be there announcing it?
Well, I don't know if I want to say best game, but the highlight of my broadcasting career was when I got to call a game with my brother Joe, who is the color analyst for the New York Rangers. So he's working for NBC, and he's doing a game in Tampa. The next day, he was scheduled to do a game in Minnesota, Game 4 of Minnesota and Winnipeg. Well, it's April. We get this monster snowstorm. And I get a call from him saying, "Hey, stay off your phone. You might be getting a call from NBC to take my place tonight." I'm like, "What?" He says, "Yeah, I'm stuck. I don't know if we'll get there. And, they may need you to fill in." Well, I get off the phone with him. NBC calls, says, "Hey, can you do it?" Says, "Of course I can do it."
Absolutely.
I'd be thrilled to do it, And then I get a call like an hour later and from the producer. And he says, "It looks like your brother's going to get here. We're not 100% sure." But he said, "The hell with it. Doesn't matter if he gets here or not. We'll use both of you." And so,
how cool.
Man.
So we're getting right up until game time. I'm looking down and they say, "Why don't you just start off in the booth, with Gord Miller, who's a fantastic play-by-play guy." And sure enough, right during the national anthem, who do I see running through the Minnesota Wild tunnel is my brother. And he gets over, to in between the benches. So he's in between the benches. I'm up top. And so the game starts and we're just doing the game. We didn't even have any end of the first period. He calls me up. He says, "You okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay. Are you?" "Yeah, good to see you. Made it." But for he and I to be on the call, that nothing will ever top that.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. NBC, nice of them to allow that. Both of you to be involved
it was
with
great. Yeah, and
So how do you do between the benches?
not bad. He talks a lot.
Okay.
So let me talk a little bit more. It was a fight for the mic.
Fight for airtime.
No, it was really great because we think the game a lot alike, and so we really enjoyed it.
You had mentioned earlier there was a story you might want to share about the draft and free agency.
Yeah. Here's the deal. I get drafted, right? 9th round. Again, thrilled to be drafted. And you don't know what's going to happen. So I end up having a pretty good career at Minnesota, right? And my junior year, when I had 96 points, 48, I think I was second or third in the country in scoring. And that was the first big year of NHL free agency for college guys. And I'm thinking, okay. And at the time, of course, North Stars owned my rights. Well, Adam Oates, Chris Shahaki, there's a kid, Ray Stazak, who was at Illinois Chicago Circle, had a monster year in the CCHA. Monster year. A couple other guys. And they're getting big deals. All free agent deals. Right?
Sure.
So I get a call from Louis Nanny, who was the GM of the North Stars at the time. He says, if you want to sign, I'll sign you. But guess what? I'm going to give you the same contract next year. It doesn't matter. And so I had no leverage. They had all the leverage.
Yeah.
And he said, he said you should go back anyway, play another year, try to win a national championship, on and on. And that made a lot of sense too. And so I ended up going back. But if I would have been a free agent, and whether I would have made it or not, I would have got a pretty big contract.
Yeah.
It's just based on what the landscape was at the time. But I have no regrets of going back. If in fact, if I could have played another 5 years, 10 years at Minnesota, I would have. That's how much I love college hockey. It was the best.
So we interviewed Blake Pila a few weeks ago for Michigan Tech, of course, CCHA goalie and player of the year.
Yep.
And he's going back for another year.
Yep.
And he said that too. He said, I'd keep playing as long as they let me stay.
Yeah. Justin Close will be a fifth-year senior at Minnesota. Yep. Jackson Nelson. They're all coming back because they love it. They want to win a national championship. And it, to be a college athlete now and how they're treated and they're, it's just, it's a great deal. And for Blake, I think it's a great move for him. He's going to have a chance to win the Hobey Baker next year and really, solidify himself as a top-notch free agent goaltender. And, I think it's great, that these guys get to do it and you establish and you mature another year. It's just amazing what a year can do for you. And, I encourage everybody to stay as long as they can and enjoy it.
You have called games at every level, essentially. Is there a player that stands out that you enjoyed watching on the ice?
Well, I tell you, I've been around a long time. I haven't seen a player as dynamic as Logan Cooley is of Minnesota.
Yeah.
There are a lot of great players, and he's just one that just takes you out of your seat. Every time he's on the ice, you have to be prepared for something to happen, and you have to be surprised because it's just some of the things he does I haven't seen. Now, and this takes nothing away from a kid like Adam Fantilli, who is going to be a great pro and picked third overall and, phenomenal player. But, when you see what Logan Cooley can do at the college level, it's I haven't seen another player like him in all the years. I truly haven't. It's it's a treat to watch.
So he had a great year last year, of course, and his line was Snuggerud and Matt Nice, too, just phenomenal.
Yep.
So obviously number one in the country most of the year, going through the tournament, and they just had a rough third period against Quinnipiac and didn't get there. But thoughts on the Gopher program right now, and what do you think they're going to be like this year?
Well, I'll start at the beginning with the national championship. I played in 2 NCAA tournaments. Final Fours is what they were called back then.
Yep.
And they are hard to win. Winning championships is really, really hard. Uh-huh. And you don't know it until you're in it. And listen, you can't forget that the other team wants it just as bad as you do.
Right. And
it can come down to one hit, one turnover, one lucky bounce, in games like that. I credit Quinnipiac for their will. They willed themselves to tie the game up. They took chances. You know what? It was a really, really good game, and the team that won it deserved to win it.
Yeah.
And they did.
Yeah, and they did.
Yeah.
And so you tip your cap because it, like I say, it's hard. It's really, really hard, no matter how good you are. And I tell people all the time, you have to determine what type of team you are and go with it. Minnesota was an offensive team. They couldn't get it going in the third. They got snuffed in and it was tough. And Quinnipiac, found a way to get that goal. Now, some teams are a complete defensive style. Some have a little bit of both. But you have to find that identity, and then you have to have everything going the right way. And they did at the end and won the national championship.
We're going to give a shout out to a couple of our sponsors here. Riverside Bike and Skate, Eau Claire's hockey headquarters, which is the oldest hockey store in the state of Wisconsin. Buy hockey gear from the people that play and know the game. And also keep in mind, in the summer months, they are a biking and kayaking headquarters. Pat and the boys will take care of you down there if you're looking to go for a bike ride or a kayak ride in the river.
Yeah, I guess it's a ride.
Right. I don't know. And Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, which has been committed to the healthcare needs of patients in western Wisconsin since 1954. The orthopedic surgeons and athletic trainers serve many area schools, and they also have a anesthesiologist by the name of Steve Capella that has put Mogi and I under a few times that grew up a short distance from Pat
right
here.
Down the block.
Anything bad you can say about him?
I can't say one bad thing about the Capella family.
Oh,
wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people. I grew up with Steve and his brother Joe, and we had a blast playing as kids and all the way up. So wonderful family.
Well, the good news is each time he's put us under, we wake up. So.
Yeah, and then pretty much no worse for wear, right?
Right.
That's right. There you go.
So, Pat, after you left the U, you played with the Springfield Indians of the AHL before you had your shot with the North Stars. So what did playing in Springfield teach you?
It was a rude awakening, that's for sure. I had signed with the North Stars right after my last game. In fact, with the Gophers, I signed a contract that night. In fact, I signed it out in Providence, Rhode Island, and I flew home with the team. And then the next day, I had to fly back out to Springfield and get in their lineup and play. And it was. Going through, you have to remember when you're in college, everyone's on the same level, and you're all trying to get to that national championship. You're all trying to win a championship. When you get to the pros, especially back then, you've got guys in the minors, and I was my rookie year, but we're all trying to get up, and so not having that, the feeling of a team was not present. Now, times have changed now in the American League, and other, pro leagues where, they're teaching the concept of team first and culture and all that. And, you'll get your chance if you do what you're supposed to do in this role or that role. But back then it was a little different. Now, we shared a minor league team with the New York Islanders. So first of all, you have two teams sharing a minor league team. Yeah. And then you have guys that are your teammates, in the North Star organization. We're all trying to get up. So it was a different year. It was an eye opener for me. And, but you learn a lot. And, the next year went better and finally got the call up. And then after my contract was up, obviously, decided to go to Europe and play.
So talk about the North Stars a little bit. Was it everything you dreamed of? You hear you're playing in your home state.
Yeah.
What was that like skating on the ice at the Met Center?
It was you never think a ninth rounder is going to make it. I always thought I was dumb enough to think I could make it, and didn't think any better. My goal is to get to the National Hockey League, and obviously I would have liked to have stayed. Unfortunately, they had a guy my size by the name of Dino Cicerelli. Yeah, who scored 600 goals, and they weren't probably going to have two of us in the lineup together. And
he probably tied you in penalty minutes, though.
Yeah, you know what? I learned a lot from Dino, and Dino was great to me. In my time with the organization, but I was with them in a time where the team wasn't very good either, and Herbie stepped aside, and Louis stepped aside as general manager, and so there was multiple changes in the organization. And after my 2 years, like I said, I decided to go to Europe and play, but it was wonderful. The guys were great, and playing in front of your home fans and wearing the North Star uniform was something I'll never forget.
You mentioned Dino Cicerelli. Any other players that stand out during your time? Any characters or stories that you can share?
Well, I grew up in an era where Steve Payne was and Brad Maxwell and Craig Hartsburg were, Kurt Giles. All those guys were, guys I grew up watching. And then I'm like, what am I doing in their locker room? I'm playing with them,
Must have been cool.
It was, and it was weird because you had so much respect for those guys and the careers that they had. Now they were getting at the end of their career, obviously. If I'm watching them as a little kid, so it was great, and it just I really enjoyed that.
So you moved over to Europe after that, and you played in Italy. Obviously, you've got some Italian heritage.
Yes.
Was that part of it, or did you have options anywhere else?
I was lucky enough because at the time in Europe, each team was allowed 2 imports, and that would be guys that aren't of national.
Yep.
But I was able to get my passport as an Italian.
Wow.
And so for them, it was like getting another import, right? So I was able to get my passport and play as an Italian. Then we had 2 other imports come in, and it was fabulous. We had, I think we had 14 North Americans on our team, and we went 29 straight, didn't lose a game, won the championship over there, and the Italian league when I was there was really, really good. And in fact, Yari Curry came over, Mark Johnson came over, Mark Pavlich played in the league.
Yep.
There were really, really good players in that league. And in fact, for our Olympic team, I think we had 18 guys that played in the National Hockey League that were able to get their Italian passport. And unfortunately, I got hurt 5 days before the Olympics for Albertville in 92. Yeah. And didn't play in the Olympics. Ended my career, in fact, in '92. But we had a really good team, and a bunch of good, really good guys, and I really enjoyed playing over there.
So a career ended by injury.
Yeah.
So not by choice.
No.
Okay.
No, I would. In fact, I tell people, I joke with people, I could have played another 10 years probably over there, and I probably would have stayed over there. That's I enjoyed the lifestyle, enjoyed the country, and being over there. But you know what? That's what happens.
Yeah, that's part of sports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're in front of the net, whether it's in college or the pro ranks. Which defenseman did you hate standing in front of?
Chris Chelios.
Oh, Chelly. He was a dirty SOB.
Quick story.
Okay.
So my freshman year, we're playing in Dane County Coliseum. You guys have been there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Craziest place ever to play. The best, most fun place to play out of any venue that I've ever been in is Dane County. So we're on the power play. I'm a freshman. And our right defense takes a shot from the point, misses the net, bounces off the backboards, comes right out to me on the opposite side. I tap it in, and I start yapping. Chelios is out there and blah, blah, blah. They were really, really good. In fact, they won the national championship that year. And so later in the game, there's a play down in the Wisconsin end. Puck gets sent out of their end. Everyone is heading towards the Minnesota end, as I am. Both referees are ahead of us. They don't see what's going on behind the play. Behind the play, unbeknownst to me, was Chelios. And all of a sudden, I'm down flat on the ice. I'm like, what? And I have no feeling in my leg. He tomahawked me behind the back of the knee. Hits my nerve, the perineal nerve, I guess it was. And my foot.
You're limp.
Yeah. And I was out for like 2.5 months.
Oh my God. Man.
Yeah, they thought the nerve was severed and the whole deal. But it was just so swollen. And finally, the feeling came back and, but anyway.
Total accident, though,
yeah.
right?
So like 3-4 years ago, he wrote his book. And he calls me and he says, listen, the author of this book is going to call you. I don't want to give the story about what happened. You get to give it. So I get a call from the author of the book. He said, tell me what happened, because one chapter was devoted to his time at Wisconsin.
Yeah. Sure.
And so I tell the story, and sure enough, it was in the book. But, Chris and I have we've gotten along for, he's a great guy. We're a good friend. But he got me.
Competitor.
He got me. He was a competitor
Yeah.
and one of the best American defensemen to ever play the game.
All time.
There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And he wanted to win. And I tell you what, I would have loved to have been on the same team with him.
Yeah.
Because he was great.
You're right. He ranks probably number one as a U.S.-born defenseman. If not, I think the NHL Network had him listed as number one as a American.
Yeah, he probably didn't have the points of a Brian Leach or some guys like that. But as far as overall defenseman on both sides of the ice, offense and defense, I put him right up there.
We've got to wrap it up here pretty quick. We've gone a ways, but I've got one more question. Mo, you got anything real quick?
Why don't you ask and I'll look at this. And
we did an interview about a year ago with a former media guy who told us a story that he had the opportunity to ask Wayne Gretzky a question. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that came out of his mouth was,
Yeah.
Any bad memories of any bad podcasts or interviews with anybody for you?
No, but but I will say this. I'm really good friends with a lot of the coaches, and throughout college hockey, and I'm with them all the time, and I'm with them before. And getting to when you're interviewing somebody, you already know the answer, and so trying to find the right way to answer or trying to get somebody to answer a question that's difficult is one of the hardest things I think to do. And so you've learned over the years, I should say, just kind of what to say to get them to talk. But no, for the most part, there hasn't been any wow moments for me anyway.
I guess for me, I'd just like to finish. We talked a little bit about surgeries before we got the thing going, and I think you said something about 17 overall surgeries on your
18,
knees,
a
couple on your hips, and then you had a kidney transplant for crying out loud. So you obviously are a warrior.
Yeah.
Take us through some of that stuff.
Well, it was really, really strange. I had to quit playing in 92 because, the doctors said you have a knee of a 70-year-old. You need a replacement. Can you hold off for a while? You're young. Let's hold off and as long as you can. Well, during that time frame, okay, I said, okay, I'll wait. And during that time, I'm still trying to play golf and, trying to stay active and all that kind of stuff. Well, you get sore. And so I was Motrin. I just overuse of Motrin, and I didn't know any better. Caused my kidney to, go bad.
Wow.
Kidneys, I should say.
Okay.
And So sure enough, when, my wife one day looked at me and said, you look horrible. I'm like, gee, thanks. Appreciate that. So her and my oldest brother, Tom, said, got me an appointment at Mayo and went down there, and immediately they knew, your kidneys are shot.
Yeah.
You need a new kidney. And I'm like, okay, got to get a donor. And I did not want to ask anyone in my family, but of course they all wanted to, donate to me. And, that's what our family does. And any family, I should say, would do for their sibling. But you have to automatically, I'm thinking, okay, one of them's got a match, right? Well, all of a sudden you have to eliminate anyone with diabetes, anyone who's had cancer. If anything else is wrong with you, you're eliminated. And it came down to, I think, 2, that my daughter and then the one who didn't play hockey, or 3, I should say, my brother Jim, who didn't play. He was one. Then my brother Jerry, who ended up being my donor. And, it was a great story. He just, hey, whatever we got to do. And I'm thankful to him every day. And,
absolutely.
Things turned out right. Knock on wood. It's been 8 years now and feeling good. And I was pretty lucky.
Well, you look really strong and healthy here.
Thank
so,
you.
Good for you.
Thank you.
And thank you to your brother.
No kidding.
Big time.
Yeah.
Pat, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
This has been awesome. Wow. All I can say
we
is
could
wow.
talk for another couple hours. I love listening to you guys. You guys have a great podcast, and I'm honored that you guys asked me to join.
Oh, we're just ecstatic you said yes.
Yeah.
Let's do it again.
Yeah. Well, hey,
all right.
Hey, we sure can. We sure can.
Oh, hey, ladies and gentlemen, please remember to say hi to our sponsors. Hope you never have to visit Chippewa Valley Orthopedics, but if you do, they're the best. And say hi to Pat and the boys down at Riverside, and leave a thumbs up or something on social media. Helps us stay in the game.
Absolutely. And a big thanks again to our guest, Pat Micheletti, as well as you folks, our audience. Please remember our sponsors, Riverside Bike and Skate, Market and Johnson, Hertel Law, and Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. And follow us, like JC said, on your favorite social media platforms as well as YouTube. And remember, folks, until next time, keep your head on a swivel and stay on your inside edges.